The day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, Peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, and they shall not escape. Zola Levitt presents Signs of the End.
Shalom, hello again. Well, we're interrupting our Tell It on the Mountains series. I know you were expecting the next Tell It on the Mountains program, and we're going to, of course, go back to them and finish them. But something happened so important here that we really do have to cut in with the Signs of the End programs, and that, of course, is the peace agreement in Israel. You know, the very passage we were quoting goes on to say, let us not be asleep, as are the children of darkness. The day of the Lord should not overtake us as a thief in the night. And it won't. As long as you're watching us, we're going to keep our eye on what's going on. And I think this peace agreement is germane to the end. I think it is a real sign of the end, and we've said that on past programs. Where the peace agreement is concerned, we should know that over in Israel, many are opposed to this. You are not being shown that on the network coverage. It's in the interest of CNN and the others to promote this peace. Ironically, to promote war. The best way to foment a war is to put peoples who are opposed to each other in a small space, as in Bosnia, as formerly in Vietnam, as in so many other places, the emerging Russian republics and so on. And if you put the Palestinians and the Israelis right next to each other, there can be that much more chance for some shooting to start, for CNN to do coverage, and to triple the price of its commercials again, as it did during the Desert Storm. And I shouldn't say just CNN, all media operates the same. We should never forget that television that's sponsored is simply placed there to sell the products of the sponsor. It has no other purpose. The idea that it's covering news is incidental to selling the soap. This is different. We are not just sponsored by somebody or told what we must say. Abigail Fridge is our guest tonight. She is with the Yesha Council. That's a Hebrew acronym that takes in Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, just the areas involved with the peace agreement, that is the West Bank and Gaza. And we sent our associate, Dr. Tom McCall, to talk with her. She is the representative of 143 settlements out there in those territories. We're going to that now. We start this program on a hillside overlooking Bethlehem, a strategic military site during past wars. This bunker atop the hillside served as a shelter on the front lines of Israel's vulnerable border. Tom joined Abigail at this site to talk about the peace agreement and what it means to Israel's future border.
This is a relief map of Israel, the northern part. You have here the Mediterranean Sea. You have here the Jordan River, the Dead Sea, the Sea of Galilee, and the green line goes like this, around through Jerusalem, down to the south, and disappears out off the map.
And that constitutes what the world is calling the West Bank, but what do you
all
call
of this is Samaria, this part is Judea, this is known in the vernacular as the West Bank. Over here, the green line comes like this, and this is the Gaza Strip. This blue patch represents 80% of the state of Israel's industry and industrial infrastructure. It also represents 70% of Israel's population. The West Bank, or as I call it, Samaria and Judea, would be a buffer that would protect this concentration of population and industry. But as the current agreements have made, we have the beginnings of a Palestinian state, starting out with an autonomy plan in the hands of the Palestinian Liberation Organization headed by arch-terrorist Arafat, which will, within a year, according to the articles of this agreement, make a Palestinian state throughout this area, and it will become a question that will be endangering the 70% of Israel's population on this strip on the coast.
I have before me some notes on the Israel PLO Declaration of Principles. Mind you, these negotiations were done in secrecy, and even the public who voted in the government who is doing the negotiation doesn't know what's going on. And I'm reading from the Yesha Council Foreign Desk article by Jason Elbaum. It says here, based on leaked version published in Yediot Aharonot, which is an Israeli periodical, August 31st, 1993. And it just gives dates and when things are supposed to happen as agreed behind the scenes. For example, and if these are correct, save your tape and take a look at it and see if this doesn't happen. October 13th, 1993, declaration enters into force. That was true. December 13th, 93, the sides sign agreement on rapid Israeli withdrawal from Gaza and Jericho. April 13th, 1994, all of these are on the 13th, 7 months down the line. Deadline for completion of withdrawal from Gaza and Jericho. Then the following April 13th, the same date, April 13th, 7 months after, Israel begins to transfer authority to, quote, authorized Palestinians, names selected by the Palestinian side. On July 12th next, by the eve of elections, the Israeli forces withdraw from all populated areas. April 14th, 1996, I'm skipping some points, but these are the major ones, talks to cover Jerusalem, refugees, settlements, security arrangements, borders, relations, etc. When the talks to cover Jerusalem begin, I suppose that will be World War III, because I don't think the Israelis are backing up 1 inch, and I don't think the Palestinians want to give way, and it will become, as Zechariah called Jerusalem, a burdensome stone to all nations. And April 13th, 1999, permanent status takes effect. In effect, a Palestinian nation will have been created, the first in history. It never existed before.
What do you feel will be the result of this agreement?
Well, Arafat, who's responsible for so many murders, is going to become the so-called president of this Palestinian entity, which it will be simply too much of a temptation not to attack, not to begin something, especially when he will be able to amass interest in this area. He will be able to coordinate with the Arab neighbors, where he'll be able to smuggle in weapons systems which would effectively put this area in range. This represents Katyusha rockets that we are known for attacking from the north in Israel's northern borders. It'll be too much of a temptation to attack here. Once this area is attacked, this is Israel. This is where Israel is most vulnerable. And placing a border like this, with the head of this area being arch-terrorist Arafat, it'll be too much of a temptation.
Not only is the main infrastructure affected, but I understand there are also many Jewish settlements in Judea and Samaria.
This overlay shows us two things. The black dots are the Jewish communities, and these areas with the lines here are where the Arab populations, the Arab residents, are most concentrated. Of course, these areas is not where the plan is being begun in this area. Instead, it is Jericho, which is over here. Arafat is already discussing that he should have control over the border crossing. There's a first disagreement with Rabin insists that he will remain in control of this. However, since Peres, his number 2 man, has told us for the last 3 months that he's had no negotiations with the PLO, and suddenly we now have a surprise secret agreement, it's very hard for me and others like me to trust Rabin's word that anything he says he's going to keep in control will very easily tomorrow he'll say it's not in our control. So having Yasser Arafat begin his state here, and whereas the Israeli withdrawal goes, he moves in, and according to the timetable of this agreement, it is within a year that the Israeli authorities will recede from this area. The Palestinian Liberation Organization will move in, and The only area, according to the agreement, which is still remain under Israeli control are the little black dots. Not the land, not the state land, the empty land around it, and of course, not the roadways that go from place to place.
So under whose protection would the Jewish settlers be that are in Judea and Samaria?
Under this agreement, there is nothing discussed about when a person is traveling through areas such as from Jerusalem. It is the classic way to get to the Dead Sea is to go up the road through Jericho and to the Dead Sea, or up the road through Jericho and up the coast to Tiberias. Now, all of these roads, including other roads throughout here, go through the Arab population areas, and if they're attacked, there's no who's going to be in authority to handle such things. If a terrorist attack occurs, even in Israel out over here, and they run across the area to the autonomous zone, and they are now under the control of the PLO, are they going to be so nice about handing them back over for trial? So this is what we have here. This is the situation.
Well, a large portion of Israel's population is appalled at the situation. 5,000 people gathered recently at the Western Wall to pray and voice their grievances with a government they feel has abandoned them. Trumpets were sounded, songs were sung, petitions were made to the Most High. Many had traveled long distances from settlements in the north and the south. They were confused and they were angry.
We want peace. We want peace. We want peace. But peace for peace. You shake my hand, I'll shake yours. The point is, tomorrow we give them a little finger of X, Y, Z, Gaza and that. It's not going to finish. Their plan is to get us out of Jerusalem and to get this place. And this won't happen. People are going to get killed here. People are going to get killed here by knives and chops. And with this protest, we want to show everybody that they don't have a mandate. Simple as that. They don't have a mandate, and they won't have a mandate, and this government is going to fall.
Everyone wants to believe that finally, after all the years of conflict, after all the years of bloodshed, that peace is on the way. No nation more than the Jews have suffered from war and have yearned for peace. And on the one hand, it certainly spurs a kind of feeling that we want this to work, but that emotional feeling is tempered by the rational side, the reasoning that tells us that this is not the way. You know, as I'm sure you're aware, in 1919, a great treaty was signed that was billed at the time as the treaty to close the war that would end all wars. I believe it was a British politician at the time who said, this is not a treaty of peace, this is a 20-year truce. And we know what happened 20 years later. We don't want that to happen again. Our lives are on the line here.
The Arabs have 22 countries surrounding us, and Jordan is 4 times as big as Israel. Israel is a very tiny country. Everybody wants a share of it. This is our country, and Abraham is not a Muslim. He's a Jew, and this land, every step that Abraham steps on was ours, and this country is ours.
Non-Jews have basically inside of themselves a dislike and a hatred for Jewish people. Not all non-Jews, but there's a good enough number that we saw when the World War II came. The whole world was quiet. When the Six-Day War came, the whole world was quiet. Who comes to help the Jews? Only God. And now we can't say that there is no God and that the Jewish people are like everyone else. It's a terrible mistake, and that's what the leftist government has been trying to poison the Jewish people with for years. Do you know how many years this idea of peace and equality? I happen to go and speak in a lot of the non-religious schools in Israel, and I know the education that they're trying to get. Who is the hero of the world? Who are our fathers? Who are our forefathers? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's no nation that has a more glorious history than the Jewish people. Who are the big heroes? The rock and roll singers. That's what everybody goes to see. See, isn't it upside down? And now this is the final step. Now we're going to show the world, so they say, that the Jews are really equal with everybody else, and this is going to be our big sign. They're risking everyone's life just on their theories and on their. God should help us, and if God does help us, then it says that God will bless the Jewish people, and the whole world then will be in peace. If the Jewish people are where they're supposed to be, and the Bible is really fulfilled the way it's supposed to be, in a way of happiness and love, and instead of in a way of cowardice and a way of running away, then there will be peace in the whole entire world.
Man on the street interviews are really fun to do in Israel because, everybody on the street's got an opinion and they feel strongly and they speak right up and they are very well informed. It reminds me, last summer we went to Washington, D.C., and we stood at the Lincoln Memorial, if you saw those programs, and we tried to interview American citizens about their points of view about what was going on in America as well as Israel and, getting at prophecy and so on. 1 in 4 or 5 people cared to speak to us at all, and then they often had to say, well, I'm not too sure about this, that, and the some didn't know, where Israel was or what was the issue there. Some couldn't even comment on the American election, which was just recently before that. So Israel's a fun place to talk to people about their situation. Their hearts are on their sleeves, let me put it that way. Well, we're going to talk more about this cataclysmic moment in Israel's long story when we come back after this.
I've made so many new friends, and I would encourage anyone to go on these tours. And Zola's incredible. His knowledge, his love of Israel.
I'm just overwhelmed by it all. It's tremendous. If anybody's planning to come, this would be the ideal way I would suggest for anybody to come. Sign up with Zola in one of his groups and come.
For a free brochure of Zola's upcoming tours, write or call today.
As part of our travel spot, I want to remark that Israel is now safer than ever, although we've never had a problem on our tours. But we can now drive through the West Bank, Jericho, every place. The Palestinian people really are friendly and feel like they're part of the human experiment and treating us well. So biblical sites that might have been questionable to us before are now available, and we anticipate some very nice, easygoing tours coming up. So I would add that note, although this peace agreement may in the end lead us to the tribulation, for the moment things are fine. We could kind of call this period the calm before the storm. This would be a good time to go to Israel. Now let's go back to Abigail and Tom.
How does this affect Israel's exposure to aerial and naval action?
Under this agreement, there is no mention of demilitarization. There is no mention, there's no word which says that arms cannot be brought in these areas. Not in these areas and not in Gaza. And we're talking here about signing a peace agreement. What we have here is no discussion of what will in fact cause that peace, make that peace, except the good word of arch-terrorist Yasser Arafat.
I believe you have a map that shows some of this exposure.
What we have here, these airplanes represent the air bases of Israel. This distance between the proposed Palestinian entity is 8 miles. This one is 4 miles. This is 2 miles. This is about 15 miles, etc. What we have here is not only putting these air bases, including Ben Gurion International Airport, where civilian flights come in and out of the country, but all of these air bases will be in Katyusha rocket range should the Palestinian Arabs smuggle in Katyusha rockets. All of these facilities will be in Katyusha range.
So now this area represents something of a buffer for Israel, which would be removed as this agreement progresses.
This area represents a mountain range here. There's high mountains here. There's the Dead Sea, the lowest point on earth. Coming up from the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea area, you have to, in the hottest part of the world, come up high mountains where there are only 5 mountain passes. Once any army is at the top of these mountains, they can go virtually any number of ways to the population area here. Arafat is already talking about setting up an airport in the Jericho area. Gaza is a port, as it is already. So we have easy access to areas which have not been declared by this agreement as a demilitarized zone. We have access to bringing in any sorts of small as well as large military equipment into Gaza through the port or through an airport that would be established near Jericho. And when you talk about sovereignty in terms of who's going to control a landmass, you also talk about its air rights, its airspace rights. Now, can we imagine a country as small as this, where this area, the narrow waist of Israel, is only 9 miles, as opposed to from the Mediterranean to the Jordan River, 40 miles. Today, aircraft goes through here and has access to the entire area and can be ready for any threat that might come from the east. If we have the situation which is very likely to occur from this agreement, we have here, if you can give me a hand and hold that end, we have here like an airspace curtain in which Israeli aircraft will only fly like this.
Be very limited in scope.
Very limited in its ability to answer any threat that might come over the hill over here.
Moral standards. And
our friend Reverend Jan Willem van der Hoeven has some insightful comments from the believer's perspective.
I believe that as Christians, when we look to it, we say, Lord, it took them 40 years in the desert to find how much it cost when they did not dare to believe God could overcome the giants of problems that they saw when they came into the land. And the 10 secular spies won it over the 2 believing spies. The 2 believing spies says, we can do it, God will help us. Look what he did in the desert for us. And the other says, no, it can't be done. And I think that's what Israel under this secular government has said. And I think now is the time for us Christians who are ourselves grafted into the tree and commonwealth of Israel, to speak up as we have never done before. Not just to sit in the corner while we wait on our easy raptures and say we'll pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We are the Israelites of God. And in as much as we are part of the king, we should be a part of the solution of the king. And so I believe that the Christians in this vacuum that's created, and the Israelis even tell me, he says we are shepherdless. They don't know who is going to get them out. And I think the 2 things that I'm going to watch, because the Lord begins to speak in different ways, is Syria and Muslim fundamentalism, both of which, or anyone alone, could destroy this whole peace process that so carefully has been orchestrated by Norway's foreign minister, by Clinton, by Christopher, by the Israelis, by the Egyptians, all, and then we're all in a state of euphoria. And I believe God has given us a word. Your peace is a false peace. It is like an unadopted mortar in a wall that will not stand when the floods come against it. And I prophesy that this is not going to stand.
Arafat is Hitler, and Arafat is no different than Hitler. And the leftist government that we have now is based on the idea, is trying to poison the people with the idea that Jews are no different from anybody else. And the only reason these people hate us is because we have their land. If we give them back their land, then they'll love us, they'll be our friends. This is a mistake. It's not even a mistake, it's a cancer.
This is an organization, the PLO, which has embassies throughout the world already. It has a flag, it has a national anthem, and its head is already known throughout the Arab world as the President of Palestine. He's supposed to bring his organization into this area and provide for elections within 5 to 7 months. He and his organization is going to provide for elections. He's going to make elections possible. And who will be elected? And will this be what we know of in the United States as a democracy, or what we know of in Israel as a democracy? In the United States, a person who is convicted of a felon is not eligible for running for public office. In the state of Palestine, we have someone responsible for a number of absolutely horrible terrorist acts, both within Israel and in other parts of the world, in which American citizens were involved, who died. And now he's becoming the president of a state.
From terrorist to president. You know, Arafat really should not be confused with General George Washington or when Menachem Begin or other freedom fighters who rose to become leaders of their nation. He is not a revolutionary. A terrorist is different. A terrorist murders unarmed, innocent people. For example, blowing up an airplane in which are the citizens of many states, Pan Am 103, an American airplane full of American citizens, just to make a point. That's not the same thing as fighting at Valley Forge or as fighting the British occupiers of Israel as Begin did and so on. It's an amazing anomaly of 20th century history that we make statesmen out of murderers. But Arafat may not do well. He's being threatened on all sides. There is the Sadat effect to threaten with assassination anyone who makes peace with Israel, and Arafat has got his problems. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. For us, the believers, Scripture comes in handy. The very passage we cited in the open of the show, 1 Thessalonians 5, is just full of meaning for us. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you, Paul says, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Like labor comes on a pregnant woman, the end times comes and the pains increase and so forth, and of course you sure can't ignore it. It says, but let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for an helmet the hope of salvation. For God hath appointed us not unto wrath, but to obtain salvation in Jesus Christ. It's a call to witness, to spread the joy of the Lord and of salvation. Our offer tonight is just the Levitt letter, the catalog, our newsletter, our catalog. No charge for those. Just send us your name and address, and we'll keep you informed on this. It's important. We're taking the point of view that isn't being presented, so I hope you will read it. I hope you will get it. And the tour coming up in December. December 12th will be the next tour, A Peaceful Christmas in Bethlehem, the first for years. It should be just fine over there. Bethlehem's a West Bank city quite close to Jerusalem, and it's experiencing peace every night. And folks, I want to talk to you a little bit about funds. You don't have to send money for these offers, but only 3% of the audience or so are supporting these shows. Now, you other 97 people, would you mind catching up with me? We know very well how many people are watching and how many are responding, and I can't continue to do this without your help. So if you please, Jewish people who are watching, if you like shows that present the positive side of Israel, how about helping us put them on the air? Thank you very much, and as you do so, Sha'alu Shalom Yerushalayim, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.